Welcome to A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to My Life. This is the place to be for stories to inspire and uplift when life doesn't go according to our plans. I'm Laura Muirhead, your host and the reigning queen of A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to My Life. I can't wait to share the plot twist stories of my guests that will inspire and uplift you when life didn't follow the plan, right here on A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to My Life podcast. Hello and welcome to A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to My Life. I'm your host, Laura Muirhead, and I am so happy to welcome my guest today is one of my favorite people in the world. And if you are a longtime listener, then you've met her before because she did my takeover, a takeover episode a while ago. So welcome, Maria-Ines, and come say hello. Introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you. It's always nice to be here. We were just talking behind the scenes that we just never really have a problem with not knowing what to talk about, right? If anything, it's the opposite. Yes, thank you for having me back. My name is Maria-Ines, and I'm originally from Venezuela, South America. And I currently live in the Netherlands with my Dutch partner and my bicultural little munchkin 5-year-old Merida. And my journey has been a very winding road, interesting one, which has now led me to most of the stuff that we're going to talk about today. I started my work time in the corporate world as a humanitarian worker. And that took me to travel the world, which I adore. And I left it, I don't even know how long ago I left it, but since almost a decade now, I have been in the online business as originally a photographer, brand strategist, and most recently as an AI strategist because I'm crazy. I realized very early on, at least in this wave of what now has become the more mainstream AI, I realized that this was something that was gonna transform the way that we experience the world in general, that we work. And I'm happy to see that I was not wrong, that my nudge and my instinct was correct. And today I help my clients with AI in a way that is first and foremost human-led, from a place of ethics, from a place of understanding its impact, and not refusing to see the negative impact, but also understanding that we, especially women, cannot really afford to be left behind in yet another mainstream technology. So I'm very passionate about this topic, and I'm really excited to dive in more about this and many other things today.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a long history. We started working together, I think it was in 2017, so 9 years. We've been through websites together, multiple layers of websites. We've been through photo shoots, and now we're definitely, you're leading the way in AI. So any questions I have on AI, I definitely defer to you. But I want to talk about, I know part of your story, and it's amazing. We need to go back to 2020, and we all love that year. It's one of our favorite years. And you were actually came out to do a photo shoot, a branding shoot with me. Well, you were also here. You were in the States for other reasons too, but I convinced you somehow, twisted your arm to go to Michigan and do a branding shoot for me. And that was amazing. So that was right. It was March of 2020, right? And it was right on the edge of all the things happening. And I remember even dropping you off at the airport going, is it okay if I give you a hug? Because we weren't supposed to touch people. We weren't supposed to be near each other. But anyway, So at that time, am I imagining things? Didn't you get one of the last flights back to the Netherlands? Was that true?
I literally grabbed the last flight, at least to the Netherlands. It was the airspace in Europe closed the moment that the last flight. And I remember them. I had just recently received my Dutch citizenship, literally like weeks before that. So I was not in the mindset of, I have a Dutch passport now. And I remember because yeah, everything was so confusing at the time. Things were happening so quickly. Things were shutting down, things were opening, the rules were changing every hour, it seemed like. And I was in the airport and they said, we had been waiting for a while already. And they finally announced and they said, okay, only US citizens, sorry, European citizens can board this flight. And I remember in that second, somebody screamed, as in, like, no. And I was just like, what happened? It was this woman she was a US citizen and she was flying to Europe and her family was in Europe. And in that moment, I was like, oh my God, you know what? I have a family in the US and I was already thinking, like, well, how am I going to get to whom am I going to get first? And then something in me just clicked and was like, wait, I can go, I can go, because I remembered that I had a Dutch passport. And yeah, literally, I boarded the last plane to the Netherlands, at least.
Yeah, I thought I remembered that correctly. And I remember also just making sure, like texting and saying, are you on your flight? Are you okay? So we all made it through and we're here. But you had a little bit of a funny thing happen on the way to my life when you got back to the Netherlands. And tell us about that.
So yeah, it's funny because I also got my own in that trip. I also got a photo shoot for me, and I remember, receiving the images, and they were gorgeous, and there was nothing really wrong with them, but you always do a little bit of edits. And I remember telling the editor, the photographer, like, oh, can you just reduce like the little pouch here that I have, like, just really, and here in my thoughts, I was like, oh, it looks like, I'm a little bit pregnant here. Like, I wasn't at the time. So I was like, oh, can you remove that? And little did I know that I was in fact pregnant, and I didn't know it. So yeah, it was not just a bad sitting pouch. It was somebody on board.
I think that's such a beautiful I mean, I mean, you it was she was unexpected,
She
but
was a
definitely
very
well
unexpected surprise.
but definitely welcome. And that actually leads me, I think, to another a funny thing happened on, I mean, it's very serious. A funny thing happened on the way to my life story, and that you had and what you experienced during childbirth. And I would love for you to share that story with the listeners.
Yeah, this is, for me, is a very important story to share because while, every time that I now speak about it, I always start with, like, she is a wonderful, a very healthy, very happy child. She's 5 years old. So, the story has a happy ending. However, the beginning was very, very rough and very, very difficult. But one of the reasons why I always love to share the story is because when I was going through it as a mom, I didn't find a lot of information about the after. So for me, it's really important, and I truly, truly appreciate the opportunity to talk about this because, yeah, I was, in a moment I will explain a little bit more. But when I found out what was going to happen to her in order to save her life, I went, of course, it's what one does, right? I went to Google and I went to look for more information, and I could find some medical reports on the procedures, meaning, yes, when A happens, then B happens. But I couldn't find anything of, okay, what happens after? Like, like the success stories, the after stories, the what happened to those kids. So essentially, what happened is I was very fortunate to, yes, while she was a surprise and it was a very unexpected pregnancy, um, the actual pregnancy was a very easy pregnancy. I to the point that I didn't know I was pregnant because I didn't feel anything. I was like, I had no symptoms, I had no morning sickness, nothing. So the the day that she was born, she I started with a little bit of pains, but I wouldn't call them contractions. They were just probably even like I never had what I call Hicks
Braxton,
contractions.
yeah, Braxton
Yeah,
Hicks.
yeah, Braxton Hicks contraction. But I imagine that it was something like that because it felt uncomfortable, but it was never like truly painful. Anyways, without getting into too many like bodily descriptions, I they told me, like if your amniotic fluid at some point is brown, then you have to be careful because that means that something, the baby has pooped inside. And that happened, and they told me, like, if that happens, you just go directly to bed and you just call us, and things will start the ball rolling. So I saw that the fluid in fact was brown. So, but even, I mean, she is my only child, and I didn't have any experience, so I was like, well, I don't know. I knew it was not good, but I didn't realize how bad it was, because this actually does happen quite often, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it's as dramatic as what happened to us. So then the midwife came, and it was decided that I should go to the hospital. Um, and by the time we made it to the hospital, they tried to start putting the heart machines, on my belly to listen to her heart. They couldn't hear any heart, so I remember that my midwife, she actually used, literally like in the old days, like it's like a little cone to hear her heart. So actually, non-technology was what helped. And she's like, yeah, her heartbeat is very, very soft, very slow. So, and then this is all happening in Dutch. And my Dutch, especially medical Dutch, is non-existent. My partner was there with me, but there was a lot of discussion, not in a rush and urgent way, but there was a lot of discussions. And I was like, okay, I don't know. And meanwhile, I was not in any pain. I was not having contractions. So I was just like, yeah, let's just wait and see. Fortunately, I feel like our entire experience was so much on a serendipitous, it happened to be that this person was there and that person was there. Anyways, there was a gynecologist on call, and she came into the room, and again talked to some people and whatnot. She finally talked to me, and she said, you are dilated, you're not dilated at all. Like, I was zero dilated. And apparently what the nurses were discussing was whether or not to induce me. And she's like, we have no time, your baby's in distress, we have to go in and we have to do a emergency C-section. And she said this to me in English, and I remember in that moment, that was the first moment that I remember losing it. Like, I was, okay, maybe because she was speaking to me in English, but I started crying. And I realized that it was serious. And it is those moments of, like, you are going through the motions, but you actually don't believe that is happening to you. Which I can imagine that the actual, for most women, the delivery in and of itself probably feels that way anyways, even if it's in the best case scenario. So yeah, I was rushed into a room. They gave me epidural from the neck down, because they said, well, if we in case we need to, like, this becomes more than we expect, then you just need to make sure that you are ready. So yeah, I was there, and I don't remember the time frame in which it all happened. I seem to remember everything went fast. They took her out, and yeah, she didn't cry. And basically, what happened was that she had absorbed not only a liquid but poo. And what happens is that gets into their lungs, and it's very thick, and it's very, and yeah, she was not breathing, essentially. um I mean, I wouldn't go as far as saying that she was dead, but she was not alive, if you understand my meaning. Like, she was just not breathing. there's a number, I don't know the official name of the number, but it's basically the number that they give a kid when they're born. They check all the signals and the signs and all the kind of things, and she was 0, so she was born with nothing. um and I remember, of course, they don't tell you anything, not as in hiding it, but everything is happening so quickly. They took her from me to a table, and the moment I clearly remember and realizing, okay, there's something here, is that they started counting. So they were reanimating her, because, yeah, again, she wasn't breathing. And my normal default is always like, why is this happening to me? Like, I remember thinking, um, and I'm gonna be very brutally honest here, but my first thought was like, of course this was gonna happen to me, because the fact that it was such a surprise pregnancy, and that, like, of course there were moments at the beginning of the pregnancy when I had to decide, okay, what am I going to do with this pregnancy, like, make all those decisions. And I know it sounds harsh, but those are decisions that you need to think about. So in the moment when I was laying there with my arms open and I couldn't move, and I felt like an elephant was sitting on me just because of how numb I was, I remember thinking for a second, I was like, of course this was going to happen to me. Of course I was going to be the woman who walks out of this hospital without her baby. But at the same time, something happens. And I know what I'm about to say may sound wild for some people, but if you have experienced anything similar to, um, out of body experiences or whatnot, I think that you will, to some extent, understand where I'm coming from. The moment I started going down that rabbit hole of like feeling like a victim and feeling like, deflated, something which is very on non-character for me, I started saying, and I think I actually said it out loud. I said, she is fine. Not she's going to be fine. I said, she's fine. She's fine. She's fine. She's fine. And I don't think she cried, but I knew for the noise, or maybe it was a nurse that came to me. She had gorgeous blue eyes and she was on top of me and she said, she's okay. She's okay. And um, I felt in that moment that I actually had made a decision to live in the version of my life where she was alive. And still to this day, sometimes I think about the me that stayed in that place. And if you do believe in what's that, in
Like the
the
sliding doors, the
yes,
like, yeah.
the other lives that could have been, I feel like in that moment there was a conscious decision to live in a different reality, almost in a different plane where she was alive. um and the next 72 hours were as difficult as those, I don't know how long, 45 minutes, I don't know how long it was, but it was a different experience, because while I did not know that everything was going to be okay, it just felt like that connection that we always say that, babies and mothers have, like, yes, they cut the umbilical cord, but you're still connected with your child. And I remember feeling her voice in my head, not saying I'm going to live, but it was almost as she was saying to me, no matter what happens, it's going to be okay. So she was put on a what they call a induced hypothermia, which means that because her brain lacked oxygen when she was born, um, her body wasn't functioning, like her blood was not getting oxygen throughout her body. So while the first few minutes she didn't really need oxygen per se, when they started giving her oxygen, it was not working correctly. And so the prognosis was very bleak. And fortunately, because in those cases in the Netherlands, it is standard procedure to actually give them that the cooling, they call it cooling therapy, but it's hypothermia. So what they did is they basically put her in an induced coma, so that her brain wouldn't start, because once the brain starts working, it requires too much energy from the body, and it would not give enough time for her brain to actually rest. And what they needed was her brain not to work actually, so that it could potentially heal. You know, babies are so, they're not formed completely yet. So the idea and the hope was, okay, if we put them in this cooling therapy, then we give the brain time to recover a little bit, and then we'll see. And so after 3 days of her being in NICU, um, they they told us, you, in other words, and this how sounded as harsh then as it sounds now. They told us, do not hold any hope, because we won't know anything until we do the echo, the MRI afterwards. Um, because they didn't know the amount of damage that was in her brain. So after the cooling therapy, they did the MRI, and they showed us the MRI, and you could see very visible, like the, you know, like you see in the movies, like the brain scan, and there were like big thick black lines, and that means the areas where the brain was not functioning. And so what they told us is, in 3 months, we're going to do the second one and see how everything develops, and you know, and then, but fortunately, you know, the first round went well, and they told us, well, you know, she can have developmental issues, like she could have motor skills and cognitive skills, disabilities, you know, and it's like, well, you know, we will deal with those things when they come. Um, but yeah, as I said at the beginning, I'm happy to say that, you know, the therapy basically saved her life, because, you know, she's a happy, healthy, crazy running munchkin. She's very inquisitive. She's very curious. She's to me, up until now, we haven't found any issues. She walked a little bit late, but she was still within the, you know, the normal. And she is growing up speaking 3 languages. So, you know, any like uh, delays that she may have, which I don't think she does, but you know, the may seem like a delay in speech or whatever, is because she's looking for words, you know, because I speak to her in Spanish. She goes to school here. She speaks Dutch as her first language, but also my partner and I speak English all the time. So she actually is, you know, 5 years old and basically speaks 3 languages. So um yeah, but it is, as I said, like when I was looking for more information about this side of the story, I couldn't find anything, and I was desperate. In those 3 days were the longest days of my life, of like, what happened to those kids, you know, what happened to, like, yeah, the study says that, you know, I don't know, 70% of the kids, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, but what happens after that? And I couldn't find any information. So yeah, it's, for me, it's important to share this story, because yeah, it's difficult. I've had friends since then who unfortunately have actually lost their newborn, and you know, they're really horrible stories. But at the same time, I also want to share my story, because sometimes there is hope. Sometimes things go well, and I think, I mean, I couldn't be more grateful that our story has a happy ending. But even if her results, the outcome of it all would have been even less than what we have now, I would have been, you know, excitedly happy that, you know, she was alive, because as I said, you know, she was basically born without life in her, and to, you know, see her running around nowadays, it's just, it's a blessing. So yeah.
And I've heard parts of this story before, and even again, even though I've already heard parts of it, it just gives me chills to hear it, and your strength. And I can't imagine. I have children, and I can't imagine what you went through and waiting the 72 hours to find anything out. And I'm glad you mentioned that she's trilingual, because I was going to say, you know, not everybody can speak 3 languages, and not everybody can speak two, or sometimes some people struggle with one. So what a miracle, but also I just want to talk about the strength of motherhood. We're this month we're celebrating here in the States, it's Mother's Day, and other countries I know it is as well. But one of the things, I'm in a movie, Mom's Rising, and we're promoting that movie this month, because you can watch it for free. But this is the power, the spirit of motherhood, and you, whether you willed it or not, I choose to believe that you had a big part in that by saying, no, I choose to have her here, and I think there's a big strength in that, in our will, especially like you said, we're tied to our children, even though the umbilical cord is cut. And I think that your will and your strength had a huge impact on her, as well as the doctors. And I think that potentially you were fortunate to be where you were for them to know. I
Mhm.
don't know if all medical establishments would have the foresight to say we need to put her, in hypothermia, in this, induced coma. And that's huge. Everything seemed to be the right thing at the right time.
Yeah, it was a perfect storm in all sense of the word because yeah, this procedure is a I don't want to say elective, but it's an alternative option in some countries. So here apparently is the standard. So yeah, had she been born in Venezuela, I don't even want to think about it, she wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
And yeah, so everything was, it meant to happen the way it was meant to happen. Yeah.
And I actually, I mean, Maria-Ines and I we work together all the time still. And I have seen her. She's been on Zoom calls, and she's amazing. She's a mini Maria-Ines, and
Yeah.
and I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, but it's true. I wanted to touch back on the point of I think of course because we have with our modern world and our our busyness and all of those kinds of things, we just really lost touch with the power within. Um and I don't mean it wasn't a magical moment. It was something more visceral. It was something more ancient. It was something more um I truly felt the power of the universe, and by that I mean however however that word resonates with each and every one of the listeners is I truly felt it, and by that I also mean the power of every mother on earth, however whatever shape motherhood takes for anybody. There was a such an immense power within our, like I remember being in that in the NICU, and hearing the like the quiet beeps because it was a very quiet place. There were other babies there, teeny tiny humans there, like just broke my heart just to see like how tiny a preemie could be. And she was quite big for what the rest of them were. But I remember in that moment just feeling like everything just around me just disappeared, and I was just there with her, and we were protected by the universe. And again, it wasn't like like again thinking of the movies of like, oh, everything is going to be okay. No, it wasn't that. It was just the universe giving me the strength to keep on going no matter what the outcome would have been. Of course it would have been devastating to have a different outcome than what we had, but in that particular second, in those 72 hours that I had to like keep on breathing, I mean, I was in pain, and I don't remember feeling like, people ask me like, oh, how was the recovery from this C-section? I was like, I don't, like, I was probably in such a rush of adrenaline. I did not have pain. So I remember, standing up, and at some point I remember sitting down because I just, couldn't stand up anymore. But it wasn't like, it was just more of out of exhaustion than out of pain. It was just the I just had so much adrenaline and so much power from everything around me that I just, I just kept on going until, they gave her to me after the 72 hours. I finally was able to hold her in my arms with, she had cables and whatnot, but I finally was able to hold her. And yeah, it was just such a relief. Again, not knowing what was going to happen, but just being able to hold her. And um, I remember she calmed down, and it's so true what they say, like, babies need their moms. And she was very agitated, not crying or anything, but because she also herself was like, druggy and all of that. But she just relaxed in my arms, and yeah, just being able to feel like you have that power to help your, innocent and fragile baby, it was also like, yeah, looking back, it's just such a beautiful thing to share with them.
And I think too that the obviously the power of motherhood, but also the power of our brains to block out. Like I think you were so focused on her and what was happening or not happening, or in that moment, that your physical pain just was what's the word, just squashed down, because the forefront was what was happening for her, and using your energy in that moment for something else other than your recovery.
Yeah, yeah.
So amazing, so amazing. And I know that like obviously you still continue to have her checked and make sure that she's on target, like any child. We take them and make sure they're on target for the milestones or whatever. But and I'm just so it's so beautiful that she is. This is a great story, a great outcome, and
Yeah,
and
yeah,
inspirational to others, I believe.
yeah, I hope so. I hope that, yeah, people, if unfortunately you have to go through this, that that sometimes there's hope, and then um to talk a little bit about the post. um we we agreed when she left the hospital. They asked us, like, because it's still very much in development, like, this procedures, not the technology. I think the technology is quite stable, but the procedures, being able to follow this babies and their development. They asked us if we would be willing to, basically allow her data to be part of studies and whatnot, and we of course agreed. And so what has happened is that throughout her life she has had different checkups, as part of, continuous studies of, kids who have undergone this type of therapy. She just had her last official checkup, of basically, I guess it was 5.5 years, and she's on target on everything. I think she even scored a little bit higher on. She's a very visual person, so she scored higher than average on that part. The cognitive also is quite on target, and I mean we see it in school as well. She's perfectly aligned with her classmates, so we don't see any major obstacle in her development. And then they asked us one more time if we would be willing to come back when she's 8 years old, and we said of course. And I also want to instill that in her, that if studies continue, or if she can contribute in any way in the future for this kinds of things, I want to encourage that for her, because I think it's important. One never knows what one goes through, so I feel like it's, yeah, if that's my little contribution to, that somebody having gone through this situation. So
Well, and like you said, you couldn't find the outcomes, and so hopefully, if somebody else is looking for that, then your data will contribute to that, to
yeah,
other parents being able to find some answers, and not only some, I mean, but positive outcomes instead, and
yeah,
hope. So, yeah, that's amazing.
yeah.
Um, and this. how did this connect you with AI?
That's another interesting story because so when you have a normal birth, the first thing that they do is they put the baby on your chest, right? So to like receive them, welcome them in the world. Of course, I did not have that because they had to rush her. And I was very open, like when they ask you to like create your birth plan and all of that, like I was very open to my first priority was always, always, always her. I was like, do whatever you need to do so that she comes. And this is before anything happened, but I was like, I I'm open to um, give me all the drugs, don't give me all the drugs, whatever happens, happens. Like I was not married to a birth plan. I was like, this is what I would like it to happen, but I knew very much from the experiences surrounding me in my life, other women, that you can only have a plan, and plans are there to be broken. So that was my first, like whatever happens, happens. So I didn't realize, and of course, I think in great to the great biggest degree, the reason why I felt so strong about not having the image was because of what happened. The fact that in that moment, I wish I could have protected her and I could have, whatever. So I just didn't have that image. And as I mentioned briefly at the beginning, I picked up a camera when I was 15 years old. So photography is almost like an extension of me. A camera is an extension of me. Being able to capture people's essence is something that is very I have it in my fingers. Um, so also because COVID was happening around the time that she was born and all of that, that meant that your photo shoot was the last photo shoot that I actually did because I couldn't travel and all of that kind of thing. So, anyways, around that time, I had already been diving into the dark corners of the internet, exploring this, thing that was happening, and this generative AI was called back then. And I was like, I've always been a geek at heart. I've always, loved to explore, like all, code and all kind of thing. And so I was already hearing about these kinds of things. And then when AI for creating images came out, the first image I created, and I didn't think about it, it just came out. I typed in Midjourney was back then. I typed the words, I don't remember exact prompt, but it was something like a Latin woman surrounded by the universe holding her baby. Because what I wanted was the image of, me. Of course, back then you couldn't like it, the image of you as AI wasn't a possibility. But for me, it was just about like I remember saying a Latin woman with big curly hair holding a baby, and the the image that came out was a very abstract image of exactly how I felt in that moment that I was just explaining earlier. It's this like abstract, beautiful, colorful um, space, like stars and nebulas and things like that. And then you see the shape of a curly hair or something or other. But it almost looks like what you would imagine a picture of, your first echo or something like that. So it's very abstract, but it just something deep inside of me just clicked. Like it was, I didn't realize how much I needed that. And it just, so I had that sort of cathartic moment for me personally, but at the same time, it also, talking about business and whatnot, it also just woken something in me. I'm like, I could use this to create images. Because again, back then it was, like, you could do this. And so I started exploring that path, and I started making images for me, for my business. And then people started asking, like, are you doing this for people? And I was like, of course I am. And I started selling, my first AI photo shoots. And I pretty much believe that I was one of the first one, if not the first Latin woman who was offering AI photo shoots. Now everybody is creating their own images and whatnot. But we're talking about, I think it was early 21, mid 21. I don't remember exact dates, but yeah, it's been a while. So, and then yeah, I haven't looked back since then. It's just been such an incredible journey. I feel like AI really was the last drop that allowed me to bring all of me in together in my business. And what I mean by that is that I see AI as a very democratizing, equalizing force, and it allows for access to people who otherwise have not had access to. Not only from the perspective of like thinking about small businesses now have the capabilities of competing with corporations, like things that were only allowed because you had, multi-million budgets to, I don't know, do a photo shoot, let's say, but also from the perspective of more access to the global south, people from other areas of the world that otherwise wouldn't have had the same um, accessibility to tools and to options to do things that we are now able to do as with AI. And this is not to say that I am not very aware of the limitations, the complications, the impact, the ethics, the all of the things that come with the use of AI. In fact, I am one of the most outspoken voices I know in my circle, at least, that talks about these kinds of things. But at the same time, I am very much a proponent and a defender, actually, of the accessibility that this gives us all, and I am not going to relinquish that accessibility for one aspect of those areas that are, yes, there are issues with, environment, yes, but we need to discuss those issues so that we can find common solutions. I don't think that the 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 simplistic approach of accusing users of, being the evil forces and blah blah blah, I think that's a too simplistic of a view. We need to, as a collective, as humans collectively, we need to find solutions for the struggles that this technology will bring for all of us. But I think it's important to allow for this accessibility and yeah, as I said, the democratization of this technology for all of us, and it's here to stay. So yeah, I'm not going to allow the privileged people to just take it away from the ones that we can make good use of it. So
Well, and do you see it um, as similar to any new technology? Let's say, the motor vehicle, the airplane, Google, um, search engines, where a lot of new things, new technology creates something that has to be dealt with, like you say. And so do you see it in that vein of, sure, like you mentioned, there are things, there are ways, things that need to be solved for us to be able to continue to use it. And I see you as, I mean, you're saying you were using it so long ago, before probably most of us ever even heard of it. You were already on the leading edge of it. So is it something that you see as, sure, we're all still getting used to it? We're all still, I imagine in the early 1900s, people said, like said the same thing about motor vehicles and airplanes. Oh, that's never going to last. That's never going to, make it. And sure, there's things that we need to offset because we use those things still to this day. So do you see AI in that same vein, where people are saying, just don't use it, we can't use it because it's taking our resources, whatever? Do you see it as something that we just need to figure a way to use it in an, solve those, I don't know how to say it, solve those particular issues along with it.
Yeah, and I think that this is the struggle that most people against it have, is that um, they realize, and I mean, we all have to realize, and I don't, when I'm saying this, I'm not saying it as like it's here to stay, so deal with it. No, I'm saying it's here to stay, so let's find a way to deal with it, so because it is they call it consumer mass consumer technology, which means it's like the internet. So but what that means also is not only that everybody is going to be affected, and I don't mean that in a negative way to start with, but I'm saying it's going to impact all of us as the internet. Um, but it also means that it's going to permeate, and it's happening already. But this term means that it's going to permeate everything that surrounds us, everything that we interact with. And again, it is so new and it's so disruptive that we are all feeling it. I feel like what happened with the internet may have felt, and we don't remember how it was, because also it's what internet is, what, 25 years by now. So 25 years we were in a very different place in our lives. But if we think about it, the impact is different, because let's say not everybody had one or two or three computers in their houses. Maybe somebody had, like, I remember when I left home in Venezuela, we didn't have a computer at home. My dad had a computer, and probably he shared it, I want to say, at his work. So email was already like this strange thing, like almost like probably for the younger generation, like fax, what is that, like that, it was that not everybody had email, not like almost like saying today, like, what's your WhatsApp? What? No, but like back then, it was a rarity. So I feel like while internet was also impactful, I feel like it was a little bit slower, because the technology was not everybody had access to it. And that's the difference here, is that I feel like, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like almost everybody has a mobile phone nowadays, even in areas of the world where maybe even televisions are a luxury in their houses. But telephones have become almost this like necessity, to the point that it maybe it's not the latest model, but even smartphones may be like so accessible that almost everybody has it. So that means that AI as a technology can permeate easier all of us. So I think that in and of itself is already a big difference than what it was before. And so the other thing is that AI has already been here around us for a much longer than we realize. Like, if we think about it, as simple as Alexa's or the Googles, like, that's AI. And it's not 5 years old. Like, I don't know when Alexa came out and Google, Hey Google came out or whatever, but it's been longer than 5 years. So, people tend to talk about it like it just happened. Like, no, actually, I think the first interpretation of modern artificial intelligence is from the 1960s. So it's this is a new wave. Certainly, the 2020, it's a new wave, and it's more consumer based, whereas before it was more like, yeah, a software based, like company based, again, corporation based, which is why I feel so strongly about defending this one, because it's like, well, now it's affecting us, so we should also be more willing to educate ourselves enough to understand what's happening with it, in the sense of, I'm not saying that you need to become an expert in AI, but you need to understand the impact on your life, the impact on your business, the impact on your security, the impact of, like now with the Meta glasses, for example, understand your rights. countries like, I think it was Denmark, they have now outlawed um, the possibilities of using your likeness for without, of course, without permission, et cetera, et cetera. Like all the legislations and all the rules and all the laws and whatnot, like we need to understand, because they will affect us. They will affect us more than we realize. So um, I think is an important. This is one aspect that I'm very passionate about, especially again, women, and I don't mean that in an exclusion way or exclusionary way, but women and underrepresented groups. We cannot allow ourselves, our voices, and our representation to be dismissed yet again, because this technology will have such a great impact that we need to participate. And participation means starting from using it, but also going that extra step of, reading a couple of articles, following people like me that
Yeah.
talk about, like just getting yourself educated enough about it so that you know what's happening, and understanding the realities of it. Because I also feel like we are so misinformed sometimes, that the fights that I see behind the scenes are not coming from a informed place. And I think that's the correct word to use. So yeah, I think it's important to, and this is, nobody has the answers. That's also the thing, right? But at the same time, I do know that there's a lot of people, good people out there, trying to look for solutions and for answers, and we need to support them, and we need to, by also yeah, understanding more and more about the technology.
Well, I think it's interesting because even just a year or just over a year, I think ago, somebody that I saw online was arguing about no AI, no AI, no AI. And that same person I see, I'm not sure if I've seen a picture of them recently that is not AI, at least edited. And I find that interesting that it seemed to have been for a lot of people, the shift came very quickly. And I think that's what you're saying too, where because the internet, is already in place, we're already at a different level of technology for this to come in now and people to be able to use it. But at the same time, even the things that you talk about when we're working together with AI, it gives me a headache because I can't understand it. So I think it's really important for people to reach out to people like you, who are on more the leading edge and know the things and know what's happening. Because I don't think we all, like anything, we can't all pay attention to all the things that are happening. But
Yeah.
for someone like you who is leading the way, I think it's important for us to connect with someone like you if we have questions, if we want to know more. And that sort of leads me into because I'm trying to be mindful of our time and we could talk forever. Um,
Yeah.
that kind of leads me to just wrapping up a bit and tell people where they can reach you, where they can find you if they do want to know more, if they do want to work with you and find out more about AI or work with AI in their business. Because I know just a little bit of what you offer is amazing.
Yeah, sure. So I am mostly on Facebook, Instagram, and I just started recently a Substack. I don't know what to call it, channel account, where I'm discussing this type of issues. So, and the first thing that I offer people is to help them what I call codify their genius, which is essentially a way in which you can extract everything and anything that you are doing in your business in a way that is useful for AI so that it can support you. So this is also wrapping up things. I don't want to make it sound like I am saying delegate to AI and cross your arms. I feel like that is the problem with most of the people who are now quote unquote AI gurus and teaching. And there's just so much noise about AI being this like magical tool when because I have worked with it longer, I realize that what's happening is that people are um, they're delegating their discernment, and I think that goes to your perfectly to your example of saying, well, if it worked for that person and they are doing AI images, that means that I have to do all of me has to be AI images. And I'm saying to the people that I work with, like, wait, why? Yes, there's certain reason and use cases why you would want to use it, but not always. And images is just an example. I'm saying in general, we need to really be careful with um, delegating our thinking to AI. There are really concerning cases in which people become so dependent on AI responses for, not only their day-to-day things, but also personal things, to the point that, yes, there are concerning cases in which people have delegated their mental health to AI and all those kinds of things. So I think that this is really important for us to really be aware and take the reins back. And AI is a tool to support us, not a tool to lead us. Like we should always keep the reins and be the leading human. AI is just there to support us, not to become us. I think that is when we understand that part, then I think that we will make the best use of AI. So these are the kind of things that I help people with, realizing. And I think that for the most part, my audience, my people are this kinds of, like you and your audience, I'm sure, are the same, in the sense of like, we are people thinkers, and we just use it to amplify our work, and so that we can, yeah, work easier. And because that is what I want AI to do. I always say that I want AI to help me live more and not do more, right? So yeah, so find me, you'll share the links, but most yeah, please feel free, especially if you are in the situation that, with what happened with my daughter, please feel free to reach out, talk to me. I am more than happy to talk about, my experience and share my my to the best of my abilities what I can to do to help. And if when it comes to AI, feel free to, yeah, just follow me. Come to learn AI from a human led perspective. And yeah, I love talking about it. I can talk about it until what they call the cows come home. So yeah, feel free to follow.
Yeah, I will absolutely put your links in the show notes, but I want to touch back on what you're saying here too, because I think that what you're saying is use it as a tool, but keep your authenticity, because I think that your humanness, your authenticity, like if you know me, you know that that's what I talk about, is being authentic. And I think if you use it in the wrong way, then that's what's going to happen. We're going to lose our own authenticity and our connection with other people, because I believe that that's still where people connect with us, is in our own authenticity.
And that will become the flex, in a world where AI is producing everything. It will ironically become our humanness that what's going to become unique and authentic and stand outish, right? Like and that does not necessarily, at least from my perspective, I'm not saying that you do not use AI, say, to write or to create images or to, that's not necessarily where authentic lives, is in you losing the, or handing over your thinking, your creativity, your creation, your ideation to a tool. So because I create, I ideate, and then AI helps me to bring it to life. Like if I haven't, let's again, the easiest one for me is to talk about images, but like if I have an idea for an image in my head that I cannot create with my camera, then I go and I ask for AI to help me to create a background for whatever. But then I can put my real image on top of that, for example. So is that idea, like, I'm not saying go out and create and ask AI to write a book. I'm saying you go write the book and then ask AI, hey, can you please edit it to make sure that it's that is the how we can work together and not just delegate to AI without any discernment, as a human. I think that if we think about, and I'll say this as the last thing, is if we think of AI as as an employee, that's like you wouldn't give your everything to an employee. Like, no, just you keep your expertise, you keep your knowledge, you keep your IP, you keep your whatever, right? That person or that employee only supports you, right, to do things faster, reach more people, whatever it is that they're doing. So if we think about it in that way and not in the, oh, AI is going to write for me, AI is going to do all for me. No, that's not the point.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to describe it. And so we will wrap up there. And again, thank you for sharing your story and your expertise, a little bit of your expertise with us. Again, I'll put everything in the show notes, but thank you for joining me today. I love you. And thanks to our listeners for joining in as well.
No, thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to My Life podcast. For more information, visit my website at www.lauramuirhead.com.